Alright, so this is going to be my thoughts on Kaguya-sama Love is War. And with that being said, let's just roll the intro.
They took it to 10. Let me tell you how I come through with the 1-2, kicking shit like kung fu. Treat a bad bitch like she average. I'm a savage, little hoe, what you want do? I'm about cash if the raw fast. I'ma get that little nigga by any means.
Alright, so before we get into the review, I would like to say that I'm kind of reviewing each the manga and the anime kind of separately. This kind of review is going to focus mostly on the manga. So if you don't want to be spoiled, I guess go read the manga. If you don't care, then you could just continue. Like I always do, I like to give my score before I do the reason. Like I'll give you the score and I'll give you the reasons why, right? So you'll see on screen what each score means, right? Anything that's a 6 and above is a positive. Anything that's a 4 and below would be like a bad score, I guess. So for this, I'm gonna give a different rating for manga and the anime. For the anime, I think I would give it maybe an 8 or a 9. And for the manga, I would give it a 10. And what I said from last review, what I mean for something to be a 10, it would have to be so good that I would recommend it to people who aren't even like that like the genre. And in this case, it's actually kind of a romantic comedy, somewhat. So let's get into the kind of plot and the main idea, or the kind of plot. Yeah, just like I said, the plot of the story or the anime and manga. So Love is War is about. It's mostly centered around Kaguya, which is one of the main characters, but each character gets a kind of their own like spotlight, right? So it's basically about these two elites at this high school, this like private school. I think it's like where the elites in Japanese society go, like the very rich go to get their education. So it follows the president, the school student council president and vice president, and the kind of gimmick that they have is that both of them love each other, but they don't want to admit to the other, right? It's basically a tsundere and a tsundere that fall in love with each other, right? If you don't know what that means that they are not honest with their feelings, and when they'll say they hate you, they actually like you or love you. That's basically what that kind of means, right? So you would think that this kind of series would be very episodic and not really have any continuity, but it actually does. The anime doesn't really show it because it's mostly at the beginning. In the beginning of the manga, or the beginning of the anime and manga are very slow, and you think it's going to be very episodic, but it's actually not. And I'll get into that in a bit. So in this review, we're going to actually talk about the characters. It's gonna be a little bit different than Shield because they don't have the same. They're in different genres, right? It's gonna be characters, character interactions, the story, the effects of the people around the characters, the effects that the characters do, and the kind of relationships that they have between each other, romantic, and how they display actual like relationships and how close it is to reality and things like that, right? And also the comedy, obviously, because that's a big part of the manga and anime. When I'm comparing the anime to the manga, I'm not saying that the anime is bad by any means. It's just that the manga is so far ahead of the anime that it's just like an incomplete story, right? Because the beginning of Kaguya-sama is very kind of slow and not. You're gonna think like it's not gonna have any like continuity to it. But if you go and watch the anime, you could tell that they did a lot with what they gave with the source material. They animated scenes very well. The voice acting was amazing, like especially Kaguya. The voice actor for her was a kind of a newer actress, a newer voice actress, but she has such a good range in her voice, because she could go from like a kind of a cute character to a very cold and distant to a very intelligent. It's just a big range in her voice acting, and I'll get into that because the character of Kaguya, I'll explain in a bit, is very there's multiple sides to her, and there's actually like an entire like arc around that. So let's start with the first character, the character that's what the series is named after, and that's Kaguya. Kaguya is the vice president of the student council, and the main love interest to Miyuki, which is the president. She wants him to confess to her because there's this general idea that she's been taught her entire life to or like her general idea is what she was like taught to believe is that or specifically in love, right? Because there's a lot of like lessons she was taught as a child, that the first person to admit their feelings is what's it called, becomes a not subordinate, becomes, I don't know how you say it, but basically the person who doesn't confess becomes the more dominant in the relationship, and she believes this, right? And she doesn't want to do that to like lose her pride or anything, so she wants Miyuki to do it. But Miyuki doesn't see it that way. In the anime they say he does, but he doesn't really think like that, and it's been shown multiple times that he doesn't think like that. What his thing is that he likes her, but he wants to be on her same level and doesn't want to look down upon. He doesn't want her to look down on her, on him. So he wants her to confess. And if he viewed himself as an equal to her, then he would confess, and he does do that later on into the story. But it's a different dynamic between those two. So let's talk about how they kind of met and how her personality was before she kind of met Miyuki. And before, Kaguya was a very cold and distant person, and she even admits to herself that she was a bad person. And this is kind of true in how she acts around people and how she was raised to be like. Her only friend was Chika, which I will talk about later on, because she is a one of the student council members. So she was raised to believe that anything a person does for another person was to get something out of it. We can actually see an example for this in one of Miyuki's flashbacks, when he remembers how she was in the past. In the past, she had like long, she still has long hair, but she didn't like, she ties it up in the anime, and but she used to let it like flow down, right? So we see the example of this happening with a girl who had her bow, like who had I believe it was her bow, like a, I'll probably put a panel shot here, but she basically she dropped her bow into the water, and this was like kind of polluted water that was at the school for some reason. I don't know why, but I don't remember. So yeah, so no one really wanted to go and get it, but Kaguya did. She went in there and got it, came back. Miyuki was gonna do it, but he didn't know how to swim at the time. I believe that was the reason. But she was able to get the bow and gave it to the girl. And I think Miyuki went up to her and said that was a very kind thing to do, and she explained that the only reason why she did that was because she was like a daughter of a CEO of a certain company, I believe, and she wanted to get a favor out of her. So we can kind of see how she's been kind of taught and raised, right? Her family is very rich, one of the richest in the country. So she's been kind of, I don't know, she's been taught, her upbringing is very different from normal kids, right? But after joining the student council, she was very hostile towards the president because she viewed his kindness as insincere and not genuine. So there's even a scene where she actually slaps him because of this. And later on, she begins to realize that his kindness is actually genuine and sincere. And this is when she finally puts her hair in a different style, right, to kind of show her evolution as a character or as a person. And later on, she kind of fights within herself, and this actually kind of makes split personalities within herself, which are that version of her where that cold and distant version of her, the child version of her, and a kind of love struck version of her. And each of them are very distinct and act very differently between each other. And to emphasize the change physically, they actually draw her as that character, or she puts her she goes in that style, right? And it's very interesting how this actually works. After a bit, Kaguya, after the president did something to kind of win her over during a festival, I think it was a school festival, and they actually kiss, but she did a French kiss, and she thought that there was I don't know, she was thought to think that that's so you're supposed to do or something. I don't know, but the concept was that she felt very dirty for doing that, and her personalities kind of split, and she became that child version of her. And throughout the next chapters, she was drawn as a child, but in reality, she was still like a normal teenager, right? So that was, and then later on, as she figures out that that's not gonna help, she actually switches to her more cold and distant. And there's this big arc about how she hurts the president because of this, and she kind of regrets doing all this. And later, it's just this big kind of ordeal that she has to go through until eventually they they both admit to each other that they love each other, and they kiss. And there's other that's the main kind of story with her and the president, right? But other characters get their spotlight, and we could go to the next character, which is Miyuki, or the president. He is very different compared to Kaguya. His parents used to be very rich, but the factory that they had closed down, and this made Miyuki's parents to divorce, and this left the father with both, I believe there was a third child between the two, but basically the mother took the youngest daughter, and the father kept the middle child, which was Miyuki's sister, and Miyuki. And Miyuki, this affects him a lot. You don't see it. It's never really told until it's revealed, because Miyuki, he sees himself as very inferior, and he doesn't want to show his true self, and he has to show up this image of how he's so good at everything, right? And the reason for this is because his mother didn't choose him to stay with her, and this made him feel very inferior in his life. So that's the reason why he always strives to do the best in everything he could do. You could see this with Chika. I'll explain a little bit of a character. There isn't much because we haven't really had an arc for her. She's mostly there for comic relief, but we'll get into that after Miyuki. So basically, when Miyuki he tries to be the best at everything. And what I mean by that is that whenever there's an opportunity to show off, like let's say in the first arc, well, not the first arc, the in the anime, they show how he was going to be part of like a volleyball like game, and he was terrible at volleyball, so he asked Chika to help. So this happens a lot throughout the series. It happens like maybe 4 times, not counting the volleyball scene. And each time he's very bad at something, but he, through the help of Chika, he's actually able to become very good at whatever he's trying to do. And this is seen as very, you know, he's seen as a very hard worker, because whatever he's like bad at doing, he works hard to try to improve. And you know, obviously as a comic relief, Chika is like you know, shown to be like very she jokes about how she doesn't want to do it and stuff like that, and how he's like really bad at everything. And which is true, he's bad at like a lot of things. Like even like there was one like chapter where he wanted to rap for some reason, and he was so bad that they drew a scene of like Chika dying. But yeah, it's obvious to everyone that he's a very hard worker. There's even a part where Chika describes her dream guy, and it's basically Miyuki, and you know, there's always this kind of idea Miyuki kind of sends to people that they should be their true selves, and you know, that's how people were gonna like him. But that's not really how he portrays himself. He portrays this version of himself where he's, you know, the most ideal version of himself. Even his like normal look, which is with that like kind of like scowling kind of look, where he has like kind of bags under his eyes, that's not his normal look. That's actually because of a lack of sleep. And it's been said many times throughout the series that he's one of the few characters that are genuinely kind to other people. Like you know, we first see this with Ishigami, and we'll talk about more about him because he is my favorite character, and he gets the most development out of all the characters in my opinion. For when we first meet Ishigami, he's a shut-in, a NEET, things like that, right? He doesn't go to school often. He does most of his homework and stuff like that from home, but he's a treasurer because he's good with numbers. But Miyuki, for some reason, there's this kind of aura around him that people don't like him. And at first we think it's because he's a shut-in and people don't like geeks and stuff like that. But there's actually more to the story, and you know, this is a big kind of factor in Miyuki, because it shows that even though basically he was accused of something that he didn't do, and people basically ostracize Ishigami, and we're going to talk about that later after Miyuki. So Miyuki actually finds out that he didn't do it, supports Ishigami throughout all of his stuff, and they become basically best friends. And that's how, you know, it shows how much, you know, research you would have to do into like knowing to like prove someone innocent, right? And there's also another character, I believe her name is Ino. She's like a new character. She's a freshman. She becomes like the what's it called, the disciplinary committee. She parts of like the leader of that. She basically like makes everyone follow the school rules and stuff like that. Basically, she was gonna run for president, and this was the only time Miyuki's ever gotten any real competition, because everyone just sees him in such a high regard, because you know how he presents himself with that kind of scowl look, and because he's like the smartest, or he's the top like student in his class, right? And this man, he wasn't good at like studying before, right? He takes like 8 hours to study each day, something like that, something crazy. So he doesn't get enough sleep, right? So let's get back on topic. So basically, the one problem that Ino has about, you know, becoming the president is that she has a lot of stage fright, and when she was doing her speech, she actually freezes up. And this was going to be a basic like landslide for Miyuki, but Ishigami like says this was like, you know, he hates seeing this kind of stuff, right? And Miyuki agrees with him, and he actually goes up there to kind of like debate her so she could have someone to talk about and like kind of help her with the stage. Because if you ever had drama before in like high school, you understand how like that having just another person to do improv with you just helps a lot, because you guys can just bounce questions and like things off each other, right? So it makes it a lot easier. And even doing this, Miyuki knew that if he did this, this would give him a chance to lose. But even then, he still did it, and in the end, he did win because people still wanted him. But it was a very close match, right? And since Miyuki became the president, he was actually able to choose all the cabinet members, and he actually chooses her to become part of the disciplinary committee. You know, and his character goes even deeper than that, because, you know, with his family being poor, his father doesn't work that often, so he actually has a job while still being in high school. And like in the US that's pretty common, right? But in like Japan, that's not really common to my knowledge. So he's working, you know, and he still like helps pay the bills and things like that. He even like doesn't like do anything for his birthday or even buys like gifts for anyone for Christmas, right? But he still gives like his sister, his younger sister, like an allowance so she could do things, right? And he even gives her like a little extra money during the holidays without her knowledge. So he doesn't do this to get praise from her, right? And he is a genuinely nice guy because of that. Alright, with that being said, with Miyuki, let's actually get into the best character, in my opinion, the person who gets the most character development throughout the series, and that's Ishigami. Like I said with the Miyuki part, when we first meet him, he's a NEET and a shut-in, and we think that, you know, everyone hates him because of this, but that's not actually really the case. And I didn't want to say until we got to this point in the video, but the reason why people hate him is because the school that he goes to now, where all the elite like students go to, actually has a middle school connected to it, or has a middle school like branch to it. So it'd be the school name and then middle school, but this is like the high school version of it. And basically what happened was that Ishigami was very popular and with like everyone. He was very sociable, right? And he had this friend that he kind of had feelings for, right? It was this girl. She was dating the captain of the leader, or the president, right? The president of the drama club. And one day Ishigami finds out that he was actually cheating on her with another girl. And the guy basically tries to buy his silence by saying, if you don't like tell people, then I'll let you have my girlfriend, like I'll lend her to you. And this gets Ishigami mad, and he like beats him up, right? He gets on the floor and starts punching him, and he makes he gives him like a bloody nose and stuff like that. And people are seeing this, right? And the guy, since he's good at acting, since he's the president of the drama club, he actually convinces everyone that the reason why he did that was because he was a jealous stalker, a stalker to the girl, right? And Ishigami just says this is insane. The girl says, no, you're the one who's crazy. He never really admits that he was cheating on her, and that's why he beat her up, or beat him up, because he didn't want the girl to live with that kind of like embarrassment and shame, I guess. That's what he says. So he kind of lives like the rest of his like middle school days at home, because he doesn't want to write the apology. And also I'll say this part for Ino too, because there hasn't been that much of her like character develop yet, and her arc that's going on right now is still going, and it's barely at the beginning. So I'll add this part for her character. Basically, she was one of the reasons on why Ishigami was able to stay in school, because she kept like fighting for him and things like that. So both of them Ino and Ishigami have like this weird kind of like uh mutual like I don't know how to say it, but they both like they kind of look out for each other, but they don't really say to the other that they've done anything. So like there's like a part where there's like a kick me sign on the back of Ino's like back, and Ishigami will take that off and things like that, right? So later on we get to the part where, like I said, in Miyuki's how he figured out what happened. But this still goes on. Ishigami's still haunted by his past because everyone hates him because of it. They all think he's some crazy stalker, so he doesn't come to school that often. And this kind of changed later on when he starts to join the cheer club. And the reason why he joins the cheer club is because he wanted to become more sociable, right? And this is around the time where he gets the kind of first. This is when Ishigami kind of conquers his past, right? At this point, the vice captain of the cheer team, she's a girl that has that kind of personality where she gets along with everyone and tries to get everyone involved, and she's very in your face, not in your face, but like very friendly towards people. And Ishigami is very he falls for her because it's been a very long time since anyone's been like nice to him, like strangers, and especially a girl like this. And he falls for her, and throughout this is during like a sports festival, and he is like one of the kind of last people. He's like how do I explain this? He is the last person or the last resort that they go to for the baton, or the not the baton, relay race, I believe it's called. And since he was in like track when he was in middle school, they think he's a good candidate, but he's actually losing a lot of confidence at this point because that girl that got cheated on and called him, that basically hates him for their relationship breaking up, that girl, which Ishigami like punched her boyfriend for cheating on her, she actually comes to the sports festival for some reason. And this is when Ishigami kind of loses his confidence and doesn't know what to do. But then this is when a girl, I forgot her name, but she's basically been like, she's one of those like popular kids that have been like kind of making like saying hurtful things to Ishigami throughout the series, and she starts to kind of respect him more since he actually is trying to become like a better person. And Ishigami actually tells her this at the beginning of the arc. So Ishigami kind of has like I believe he has a talk with Miyuki, and he basically does what he gave him advice like so long ago about how he should write his apologies, and he just says to her in like a straight face after she said that he ruined her life. Ishigami just says, "Shut up, dumbass," like just straight to her face, and he gets the confidence to run, but he actually ends up losing anyways. But that's just like as a joke, I guess. And then we get to the kind of heart festival, I guess, where this is around the time where Miyuki and Kaguya get, they have that kind of romantic part. But this is when Ishigami kind of confesses indirectly to his crush and how he likes her, because he was able to win this giant cookie, and there's a tradition at that school that if you give someone like a heart-shaped object during this day, then it's basically you giving your actual heart to someone. So Ishigami didn't know this, right? But he does this and indirectly confesses to her, right? And later on, she says, "Can I have some time to think about it?" Ishigami says 3 months, since they were talking about cherry blossoms and when they blew, and he thought that she was talking about that, but it was actually the confession. I'm not gonna get too into their relationship because it's very recent in the manga. So if you want to check that out, then go and read it. But yeah, with that, I think I'm gonna end it here. There's a lot more I could say about Ishigami since he does get the most character development, but I think this review has gone long enough, and I think I've given a lot of reasons why it's such a good series. Because at first you think it's like gonna be a episodic, but it actually becomes more of a story-driven show and has a lot of continuation between each chapter. But I think this review is long enough, and I might have rambled too much, so yeah.